Yeah, well, so we just finished playing Triumph by Phalanx for the first time. This is a prototype, but just thought we'd have kind of a breakdown of what we experienced. There'll be kind of a full review later on the channel, or a preview, I should call it. Yeah, we sat down, played this start to finish, about 3 hours for a new game, which was, I think, a good length for this type of game.
Yeah.
I think we were also very slow, learning the rules and lots of decision making, but I think the clip would pick up with multiple plays, which...
And I think round 2 and 3 did pick up a
Yes,
little bit.
yes.
Still moves a little slow, because you do have to make key decisions. I mean, it's important to understand how your family cards played, affect your turn order, and what you can get from those actions. It's important. You got to think it through.
Well,
I didn't think it through enough. That's
it's a dudes on a map game, but it's much thinkier than a lot of the ones out there where it's like, I just need more guys.
Yeah.
Because how and when and how many you can place is pretty restrictive, honestly. There's not many actions to put them out.
I don't feel like we got a lot of choice to put people out that often.
And something that you were saying earlier, where it's like, I don't know which ones to bet on. I'm like, you got to go in on the ones to put guys out. Because having guys out is so important.
Makes a big difference.
It's real hard to just miss out on those regularly throughout the game.
Three where a majority of people can put pieces out, 3 phases.
Yeah.
So pretty
3 of the 6 then. And it was interesting, you guys used some of those cards that allowed you to, like you got in this one by using that law card.
Yeah.
Very powerful, because you basically guaranteed yourself, didn't guarantee, but 3 points.
Well, in early game, it was like, put an extra guy out. When you put a guy out, I had a card that, or it was put 2 guys out, but someone else gets to put a guy out. So you can make some friends that way, but anything that could put more guys on the board, I think, is really important in this one.
Yeah, so ultimately at its heart, it's area control, because that's where you're going to spend most of your points.
And it's
other than fighting. Fighting is also important.
But it's also very cutthroat. Like, you will have stuff taken away from you, and people will try to do that to you. You want to cohabitate with everyone to get as many points as you can, but people will. And so it's mean-spirited in that way, but you just kind of know that going into it.
Yeah.
Well, it was also interesting because that one card you had that allowed you to move other legions owned by other players.
Yeah, that would be super
very powerful if you're close, but you were way over here, and there wasn't, and also turn order came into that.
Since I was first,
which was
interesting. Had any legions. So,
yeah, that was interesting, and I wonder if that's a translational issue, maybe, but maybe not.
Or it's just like kind of bad luck.
Yeah, it's bad luck that card.
You have to plan to use certain things, and I think that's where the time of it. There's a lot to consider with it. Almost every move. Some of the moves, it's like, all right, I get 1 money and I move on. But the placement of guys and when to trigger your building abilities and your different lore cards, like, is it the time to kind of play my head? Really, there's a lot to consider, which I like in this kind of game.
Yeah.
And I also think those decisions somewhat change based on the evolving nature of the board, but not a ton. It doesn't change that much that quickly.
No, but if you're not looking, I think it can.
Yeah.
Where you're like,
I always find these games are like that. Where'd your 5 pieces come from?
Yes.
I didn't really pay attention to that. Yeah.
And I think I'll go back to the time it took to play this. I think other games and other companies would very easily make this like a 6 or 7 turn game, and it would be very long.
Yeah.
But I think they have done a good job of keeping it. Hey, we made this a 3 turn game. It takes an hour per turn at most, and I think that makes it much more playable and appealing to people who aren't going to sit down for a 6 hour.
So with only 3 turns, did you guys feel like it was enough?
Yeah, I think that for me, everything about this game felt very tight, right? And so like money was tight, barely able to fight, right? It was always on the cusp. You can't. There's a lot of like uncertainty, not through randomness, but through player influence in the cards that are selected for simultaneous resolution. So I think that keeping it down to 3 rounds just continues this idea of being tight and right. And I think it definitely benefits. I personally wouldn't want it to run long, but I don't like super long games anyway. Mm-hmm. But I felt like both in terms of 3 phases in about 2 to 3 hours, right? If we turn around and play this immediately again, I think we could probably get it down to 2.5 hours.
Yes, agreed. Mm-hmm. But I think that's a great spot because as much as I love Dominant Species, this has a similar feel to that in kind of what you're doing. That's a 5 to 6 hour game.
Yeah.
Like it just, and I'm fine with that, but I know a lot of people are like, that's a big ask.
Yeah.
But we played, and in a 58-point game, there was 14 points between
Yeah, not bad.
first and last. A game that can have that many points and still be tight that's a big win as well, I think.
And it's also interesting because I felt like early on you had a huge lead there and huge was like 8 points or 10
Yeah.
points. It wasn't like you had 30-point lead, but then the rest of us kind of combined to reduce that lead a little bit, took some of your stuff away, gained, so it tightened up a lot during the third and final round.
Yeah, I really liked a lot of the parts of this game, and how they all worked together was pretty cool. And I just think sometimes in games you got a lot of mechanics going on. It's kind of like, okay, what do I focus on and what do I do? There's a lot of different aspects to this, but I felt like it's like you got to do one thing here and one thing here,
Yeah.
and all of those things worked. And there was very few things in the game where I felt like that's useless. Almost nothing in this was kind of dead weight or extra, whereas sometimes the action or mechanic salad games, it's kind of like, I don't need to do this bit so much.
I also felt like it helped because it's regimented, right? You have these, however many, 7 different phases, and it's like you're going down them, so it wasn't too much to think about all the time. Now you got to remember some of those, like the console, that's going to decide how many dudes you have to fight in your battles,
And the sequence of how
when they're going to be
resolves,
picked.
right? Yes.
And that's
Yeah.
so important because if you don't get your main leader out there, you're going to get less value from combat unless you have really good law cards. But it's also good sometimes just to have your secondary leader to get a few points here and there, but you can't do that the whole game and hope you're going to win.
No, but I think that was the I don't want to say slowest, but that was the thinkiest parts of the game. Was there where you're like, okay, we're going into the console phase. I got to make sure that if I either want a really high influence number, so I can go first, but then I'm going to go last when we resolve combats, which is not good. Or I can play my middle guys, and I'm going to get lots of legions, but like I also have less control maybe over like when I'm going to place guys, and if I'm going to be the one to initiate a battle, or if I'm just going to be like a subsequent minor leader. There's lots to consider, and then it's like putting your troops out, buying auxiliary guys, and do I trigger my battle? There was a lot more to that console and subsequent combat phase than some
What
of the
was
other
the
ones
phase
as well.
after the console?
The Praetor.
And then the one after that decided the games, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
So you had to make sure you had a decent card because that gave you guys a lot of victory points.
Yes.
Yep.
And that ultimately was a big, I think, a big decider. And I
got
very
8
hard
points
on
from that track,
Yeah,
and
same.
that
Yeah.
was the lead at the end, basically.
Yeah, interesting.
I had a really enjoyable time playing this. I like this style of game, though.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
There was some table talk and negotiations. Not a ton, but enough where it was like, hey, I'll pay you $1 to not screw me over.
Yeah.
Or like, hey, if you give me $2, I can help you win a thing. There was 4 or 5 instances of that in the game,
Yeah.
without it like dragging on. But all of that being up for negotiations fun, especially in a game where it's like it's almost zero sum. Like, please don't screw me. Please screw someone else instead.
Yeah.
Or like, hey, come on, please help me to like. But I'll pay you money to like buy an auxiliary so we can have more guys because we desperately need to win. I need to win more than you. Please help me. I liked that, but that it wasn't overwhelming because I think there are people out there who don't like that, where they're just like, I just want to play the game.
And there is a lot of that take that here, but also a lot of negotiation as well. But you got to be prepared because sometimes those take that's are going to be like, oh, you lose your guy, and I'm like, oh, great, or you steal my 2 legions, or that could be a huge swing in the game. You got to be prepared for that.
Or like
Got to be aware.
I drafted a cube and turned him into some legions.
Yeah.
I'm like, that was a massive,
That was pretty cool.
Helped me to win a battle, which is amazing, but also hosed the owner of that cube
Yeah,
from
you lost
points.
like 2 points.
So there are some things which are like, ugh, like very powerful stuff.
Yeah, I enjoyed it too. I had a good time. Did you guys?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's basically a Waro, like a war game Euro kind of hybrid
Yes.
thing, which is my favorite style of game. And I would play it immediately now. So that's like, it doesn't get
That's a
better
good
than
sign,
that,
yeah.
right? So yeah, I would definitely play
Yeah.
it again. It was a lot of fun.
It'd be different because I think we know what we were doing.
Yeah, very, very different.
Strategically.
Yeah.
This is a prototype, but some of the rules and the way the book was organized was a bit tenuous.
It was good. It just needed to be in a different order.
Yeah,
But-
or there also, I think there needs to be like an appendix or like a glossary.
Yeah.
Where it was like, hey, this symbol, I know it means barbarian control, but then there are cards that refer to that having a value. What is that value? Is that value the shield, which is a different symbol? Like, there's little bits and pieces like that, but, you know, with all these prototypes, they clean that stuff up in the rules.
I felt like the most important part of the rule book was basically page 22 to the end because that ran you through the phases. And I thought they were very well laid out, very clear.
Yes.
There were some good pictures that coincided with what was on the board. So I think that helps you play the game, and I think that's good. Playing the game is the first thing you got to get over to understand and enjoy the game. Right?
Yeah, and some of the cards are written in such a way where it's like, how do we interpret that?
A little
There was- and-
clarity needed.
But it's also one of those games where some of the phases are pretty free flowing, where some of them are not. We had a big joke earlier in the game about turn order and influence order. Those are two very different things. And in some phases of the game, there is absolutely no turn order, and in some, there absolutely is. And how and when you change your influence on the cards you've played by playing intrigues or lore cards, there's no structure to that.
Yeah.
And that is something that I find a little bit arresting, where it's like, because we play games that's just like rules, 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 rules. There's a structure to everything. And some of these games are just like, it's up to
A
you.
little free flowing, yeah.
So,
Well, the
who's
battle
gonna play
cards
that gamble?
specifically get played during battles, but some of the other cards.
But the order
it's
in which
just-
they get played.
Yeah, you're right.
I'm going to play this all to help myself, and then
You're
someone's
right.
like, "Ooh, no, I
Yeah.
play a card on you."
But even in the use of the family cards, you know how you can use the intrigue and other
Yeah.
things to, and that was just like, just go when you want to go, and it would be better if it went in
But-
an order.
Yeah,
But
and it's when do you show your hand? I
Yeah.
want to go all in on this, so I'm going to put out a bunch of influence, because then someone else is like, I'm going to trump you now.
Yeah.
When they wouldn't have done, but there's no, they wouldn't have put, and then it's like, oh, I'm going to put some more in. It's just so free flowing. That's kind of like, okay,
yeah,
we all just agree that like this phase is done because no one's going to play on it. Let's resolve them now. Whereas every other game is like, okay, in turn order or reverse turn order, you get to play a thing and then pass and then pass, and there'd be structure to it. And having a phase that's less structured is something that I'm not very used to.
yeah.
So that
War
was-
games
that
are
was something
pretty
fresh.
structured.
But yeah, I had a blast playing this. It's
Yeah.
like David said, I like this style of game. Before we ever were into like hardcore wargaming, this is the kind of thing that we played and I enjoyed. Dudes on a map, area control, conflict negotiation. What's not to like? I like this kind of thing.
Yeah, I'd play it again immediately too.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm looking forward to the Kickstarter and the final thing, because the map art is stunning, by the way.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Like I'm just sat across the board, just looking at the little mosaic tiles, and the closer and the more you look at the board, the nicer it gets.
Yeah.
I really like that. I'm curious to see if they'll do anything with the cubes, if they make them nice little plastic pieces or anything like that.
Actually, I like the cubes. I think sometimes these games, they go a little too far with the pieces. I really like the look of the cubes on the board.
I do too. But if they did a plastic components option, I wouldn't be mad.
And they probably will.
But this feels a little bit old school, but
Yeah.
dominant species to me.
Yep.
A bit of the 1812 Birth of America series.
Yeah.
It's fun to play with cubes sometimes. But yeah, I had a blast. So thanks for playing with us, by the way.
Yeah.
I really appreciate
Chris and
you doing
David,
this.
thank you for letting us come over and play. And
Well, thanks for showing it to us.
yeah, absolutely. I think this will be on Kickstarter January 30th, right?
Yes.
So very soon.